The morning sun hit my property, but it did nothing to warm the chill that had settled over me. My cornfield, the pride of my land, was gone. Bulldozers had come through in the dead of night, leaving only flattened earth and jagged lines where rows of crops once stood. And as I stood there, jaw clenched, staring at the destruction, I knew exactly whose handiwork this was. Cordelia, the HOA president. I had been warned about her before, but nothing prepared me for the scale of her audacity. A simple dispute over boundaries had spiraled into relentless attacks, each more brazen than the last. Notices had piled up like a paper mountain. Fines, citations, letters claiming my land somehow belonged to the HOA. Every day, a new obstacle. Every day, a new attempt to make me buckle. I walked to the mailbox. There it was again, a letter, stamped but unsigned, threatening legal action if I didn't comply. I tore it open, hands trembling, not from fear, but from rage. They accused me of breaking rules that didn't exist, of violations I had never committed, all to push me into submission. At the next HOA meeting, Cordelia's smirk was a blade in the room. "Mr. Thornfield," she said, voice dripping with authority, "you've been negligent with your property maintenance." I pointed out that my fence, mailbox, and garden were all within regulations. The board looked at me, then at her, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. Cordelia wasn't just confident, she was untouchable, or so she thought. As days turned into weeks, her tactics escalated. The HOA sent inspectors with clipboards, cameras, and measuring tapes. They cited me for minor deviations, exaggerating flaws that were invisible to the casual eye. She made sure every interaction was documented, every confrontation a calculated move. My neighbors whispered, some out of fear, some out of sympathy. I realized then that Cordelia didn't just want control. She wanted to break me in front of everyone. But I wasn't alone. Julia, my wife, stayed vigilant, watching the patterns, tracking every move, questioning every letter, notice, and inspection. Together, we began to see the method behind the madness. Cordelia thrived on leverage, intimidation, and the silence of those too afraid to challenge her. And the more she tried to isolate me, the more determined I became to protect our home. Then came the forged zoning documents. At first glance, they appeared legitimate, but a deeper look revealed alterations, numbers that didn't match, signatures that didn't belong. This was no mistake. She had gone to extraordinary lengths to manufacture compliance against me. That's when I knew. Fighting Cordelia wasn't just about property lines or HOA rules. It was about exposing the truth, no matter the cost. I spent nights combing through records, old HOA minutes and county filings. I learned about clauses she twisted, votes she manipulated, and the subtle ways she terrorized homeowners into silence. My anger grew, but so did my resolve. If she thought she could isolate me and make me a cautionary tale, she had misjudged my patience and my persistence. By the end of that month, I had enough, not just to fight her, but to protect the legacy of my land, my family, and every neighbor who might fall victim to the same tactics. I wasn't going to bow. I wasn't going to pay her fines or follow her unlawful instructions. And I was about to gather the evidence that would show everyone the real Cordelia, the one behind the facade of HOA respectability. That was the beginning. The battle was no longer about disputes. It was about survival, justice, and exposing the lengths some would go to control others.
The bulldozing of my cornfield had been just the opening act. Cordelia's assaults didn't stop at property destruction. They seeped into every corner of our lives. Every week brought a new violation, each more absurd than the last. She used the HOA board as her instrument, manipulating votes, rewriting bylaws, and fabricating evidence. But there was a flaw in her meticulous planning, her hubris. One afternoon, I received a call from Derek, my old friend and financial consultant. He had been reviewing the HOA's books at my request, digging through their accounts and invoices. What he discovered was staggering. Forged signatures, phantom contractors, unaccounted expenditures, and outright embezzlement. The HOA wasn't just overstepping authority, they were committing serious financial crimes. Derek looked at me with a mix of disbelief and grim determination. He said, "This isn't petty harassment. This is organized corruption, and we can prove it." Together, we mapped out the layers of deception: forged board minutes, fake vendor contracts, and payments to people who didn't exist. Every layer led back to Cordelia. Meanwhile, Cordelia escalated her intimidation tactics. Neighbors reported strangers taking photos of my property, unusual activity at odd hours, and threats delivered via untraceable emails. She had created a network of fear that stretched across the community. But with Derek's evidence in hand, I realized that fear could be turned against her. Every forged document, every suspicious payment, every threat could become proof of her crimes. We began collecting everything systematically. Copies of emails, letters, photos, and bank records formed a mountain of evidence. The more I uncovered, the more I understood her obsession with control. She didn't just want compliance, she wanted humiliation, isolation, and dominance. The realization fueled my determination. Then came the moment of confrontation. Armed with legal counsel and Derek's forensic analysis, we presented the evidence at a specially convened HOA board meeting. Cordelia tried to maintain her composure, but cracks appeared under the pressure. Every document we had meticulously traced, every fraudulent record we exposed, forced the board to acknowledge her manipulation. The room shifted. Her carefully constructed facade began to crumble. It wasn't just financial misconduct. Derek discovered environmental violations, illegal property modifications, and contracts signed under false pretenses. Each revelation tightened the legal net around her. By the end of the session, law enforcement had been notified, and federal agencies showed interest due to the interstate nature of her schemes. Cordelia's panic became palpable. She tried to stall, to obfuscate, to redirect attention, but every attempt only reinforced the evidence against her. The board could no longer shield her. Neighbors who had once feared retaliation began speaking up, confirming incidents and corroborating patterns. The web of intimidation Cordelia had spun for years began to unravel, thread by thread. By the time the authorities intervened, the full extent of her misconduct was clear. Fraudulent board actions, embezzlement, harassment, environmental crimes, and coordinated intimidation. Cordelia and her closest allies faced legal consequences that were severe and unavoidable. Meanwhile, the HOA board was dissolved and restructured under federal oversight, ensuring that such abuse could not occur again. The process was long and painstaking, but it had a profound effect on the neighborhood. People who had once avoided each other out of fear began to communicate again. Boundaries were respected, gardens flourished, and the community slowly healed. The fight wasn't just legal, it was restorative, reclaiming lives and spaces that had been dominated by fear. As the dust settled, I realized the victory wasn't just mine. It belonged to anyone who had been bullied, intimidated, or silenced. Cordelia's schemes had been exposed, dismantled, and legally addressed, and in that reckoning, a sense of normalcy began to return. A normalcy that was peaceful, deliberate, and hard-earned. Julia appeared at the end of the hallway, tying her robe, eyes wide with concern.
"Glenn, what's going on?" He swallowed hard, sweat glistening on his forehead. Karen, that's just part of it. I kept records, copies of everything. She never realized the old cloud backup from the HOA's previous system was still accessible. I found a folder she didn't know existed. On the kitchen table sat a scratched black USB drive labeled simply Archive B Resolution Files. Julia pulled out her laptop and reached for it, but Glenn stopped her. Wait, you need to understand what's on here first. Inside were spreadsheets, Word documents, photos, and audio files. The first PDF, titled Mitigation Protocol DM, outlined a cold, calculated plan. Phase 1, paper pressure. Deliver false violations, exploit minor infractions, create constant stress. Phase 2, social erosion. Turn neighbors against the target, spread subtle fear and suspicion. Phase 4, exploit vulnerabilities, track routines, isolate, destabilize psychologically. Phase 4, off-record enforcement through contracted agents. Julia's hands shook as she read each phase aloud. Glenn added quietly, Phase 4 is in the audio files. The audio files revealed even more. Voices of Karen and her associates detailed surveillance of my home, monitoring schedules, and instructions to scare, manipulate, and intimidate, carefully ensuring no legal trace. It was chilling. Julia looked pale. She documented every step. She tracked you. Us. We agreed immediately this USB had to go to Detective Reed. Early the next morning, we brought the evidence to him. He listened to the audio, examined the documents, and his professional calm gave way to shock. This isn't just harassment, Reed said gravely. This is organized conspiracy and premeditated intimidation. Interstate elements mean the FBI can act. You've uncovered a pattern of serious crimes. He printed an official receipt and assured us the files would reach both state and federal authorities. The sense of relief was heavy, but tentative. Months of fear had left scars. 6 months later, life returned slowly but steadily. The neighborhood, once tense and divided, began to heal. Julia suggested a small gathering for neighbors, a simple dinner to reconnect. People came, sharing stories, laughter, and music. Children ran with sparklers, neighbors brought food, and old traditions resurfaced. A retired veteran left a handcrafted wooden sign at our gate. This property is protected, legally and otherwise. Julia and I mounted it proudly. The message wasn't just for outsiders, it was a reminder to ourselves that we had reclaimed our home. As the gathering wound down, a note appeared taped to the sign. From our neighbors, to the one who reminded us that fear only wins when good people stay silent. No signatures, just gratitude and recognition. Walking through the pecan grove behind the house, I felt the breeze without tension, no longer imagining threats or intruders. Julia joined me on the porch, the light fading, stars sharp in the sky. For the first time in a long year, I could say the words sincerely, "We're okay." And truly, we were. The storm had passed, not with chaos or fury, but with peace, community, and the quiet reclaiming of our home.
Every neighborhood has its secrets, and every Karen leaves her mark. If you love true HOA stories like this, make sure to watch more on our channel, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life neighborhood drama. Thank you.